Buzzaar this peaceful and wonderful Saturday morning. So lovely to see lots and lots of friends already logging in and saying hello to all of us. It is a special day in many ways. I mean, all of you know it's Gandhi Jayanti, it's the International Day of Nonviolence, and we wish all of you a wonderful, day today, full of quietude, full of peace, full of books, of course, because what else can Team Funky Rainbow wish you on a holiday? It is also very special because it's Wildlife Week. I mean, Wildlife Week, which we celebrate between the 2nd and the 8th of October every year in India. And this Wildlife Week, which is celebrated across the country with an aim to preserve and protect the flora and fauna of the country. And in fact, an amazing fact that I stumbled upon yesterday was that the first Wildlife Week in India was celebrated way back in 1957. So we are in our 67th Wildlife Week at the moment. I mean, 67th year of celebrating the Wildlife Week. And we do have such wonderful guests joining us later in the show. Many of you know of the fantastic work that Pankaj and Piyush Seksaria have done in the field of conservation, in the field of animal preservation, and in just researching, documenting, and writing about our biodiversity. So we're really excited. And Muttama, who's very excited because she says it's the first time we have siblings on a show. Hooray for that as well. And brothers, we call them brother warriors, Pankaj and Piyush Seksaria, who will join us later in the show because there are two of them and they've got loads of experience in the space. We are going to start our guest conversation a little earlier today. We'll begin at 12:15 so we can hear the experts talk about conservation. It is, the word conservation is, it's a big word and it's bandied about every time, whether we're talking to children, whether we're talking amongst contemporaries. What does that really mean? When we say that a species is an endangered species, what does it mean? It actually means that it faces a very high risk of extinction in the wild. And I had put down some facts from the books that are at Funky Rainbow. It says a species is classified as endangered when its population has declined between 50 and 70%, and as when its population is restricted to less than 250 mature individuals. And according to the IUCN, which is an organization that that studies the conservation of animals and makes lists of animals that are endangered, the IUCN says, which is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, they say that 16,306 endangered species are threatened with extinction as of date, and these include both endangered animals and plants. And we know, many of us who are watching the show, in the days when you were younger and you were at school or college, we used to see sparrows and dragonflies and so many creatures right amidst us. Where have they all gone? This is not, to send out like a doomsday kind of prophecy, because our guests today really have some wonderful stories in conservation to share. But, it's to say that all of us need to work together. We need to actively come together and do our small bits in any and every way to prevent species from dying out. These glorious flora and fauna species that share this planet with us, we absolutely need to conserve them. And what better way to get, to do this than to get our children involved in this? To get children to be part of the process, because they are going to grow up and become adults who inherit this world. And really, I feel that if we could, give them a sense of the fact of the welfare of this environment, or to make them aware that we all need to do our bits, and they too, in their own small ways, need to do their bits to, to protect and to conserve the species in this world. I think it's a job, that each and every adult, whether you're a parent, teacher, librarian, grandparent, uncle, or aunt, you really need to undertake this job. And I feel the best way, and it's the way that Funky Rainbow knows most of all, is that books really kickstart that journey, kickstart that process of becoming aware of, of the problems that impact us in the world around us. And not, the idea is not that the books give you a sense of gloom and doom. They have stories, they have facts. There are books of fiction and non-fiction that tell us that people have worked together, they've come together for a better future to preserve various species from dying out. I mean, there is the natural process of, extinction that occurs, but still, what we can do in our own capacities to prevent these wonderful species from dying out, I think each of us definitely needs to take a step in that direction. So, of course, we've got tons of books to recommend, and I'm delighted to see friends, Joanne saying, "Good morning, Team Funky Rainbow. Couldn't miss yet another Saturday. We've missed you for sure. You've been busy recommending books and buying them, I can see, but delighted to have you here this morning." Good morning to Deeksha Rastogi too. You say, "Hello, Funky Rainbow." And I know you, sent us, messaged us saying there's no way you and your daughter are going to miss this one. Wonderful to see you here after a long time. Divya Menon and Avyukt and Ameya Nair, lovely to see you here this morning. And Joanne, of course, saying that the elephant is giving me patience goals. I'm going to have to follow on that footstep or on that path very quickly. I can take credit for the fact that I'm perhaps the most impatient person in this office, and perhaps I'm just saying that. I'm sure everybody else will vouch for the fact that I am the most impatient one. So yes, life lessons and living goals from the creatures that share the planet with us. Debashish Majumdar saying good morning, and Rupa Baliga saying good morning. And I do want to send a special shout out to you, Rupa Baliga. Mums like you make us do what we are doing week after week after week. It's been 1.5 years of the Buzzaar. I mean, I think we've done like over 60 bazaars at the moment. That's collating, collecting, and picking out books from our collection and trying to present them to you in different ways, introducing you to guests, who we feel, experts on the topic and who are really happy to share their knowledge and their creativity with us. And, when mums like you take that message forward, and we know there are many in our group who do that, take this message forward, talk about the books to other mothers, it just makes a big deal of difference, because with a small team at Funky Rainbow, we can reach these many people. But each one of you, whether you're library educators, parents, or teachers, taking this message forward means it will spread far and wide. And I do know you're a huge fan of our guest today, a huge nature lover yourself, Rupa Baliga. So in a sense, this bazaar is for you. Arunji is saying good morning, and Avyukt saying, "Auntie, lots of birds, even sparrows, are slowly coming back. We spotted them during the lockdown time." You're right. When everything quietened down with the pandemic, Avyukt, we really could see our flora and fauna around us so much more. I can see, several. Anita Venugopal saying, "Hello from Devansh, and I love animals, and I'm looking forward to this bazaar. Delighted to see children here this morning as well. Do wait to watch our guests. They've done such fantastic work in wildlife conservation and have these wonderful books that need to be on, all your reading lists for sure." Preeti Ramchandran saying, I did breathe while I was waiting for you to come online. That's Sham. I think he's sending out the message to all of us. Breathe, guys. Like, I know we're going to go live, but the chaos at Funky Rainbow's office is unbelievable before we get started on a show. Everybody doing 20 things at the same time just to get this show up and running. And so that's Sham, I think, sending all of us a message saying, breathe, calm down, the world is not going to end, really. So lovely that you were breathing. And Guhan adds, you say that extinct dinos, mammoths, endangered emus, olive ridley turtles, lots for you to watch, Guhan, at the show. I'm delighted, really, that tons of children here this morning. So, of course, I mean, I want to tell our friends on Instagram, thank you. Many of you join us on Instagram, and we're really, delighted that Instagram is becoming a really like a popular channel to see the Buzzaar. Although we're not able to put this into our live stream, which means when the guests of the day come up, later in the show, you're going to have to go to our Facebook page or YouTube channel to watch the conversation. Please do try to do that, Funky Rainbow's YouTube channel or Facebook page, to watch the conversation with our excellent guests, Pankaj and Piyush Seksaria. As always, the books are all up on our website. We're recommending just a few, but there are tons and tons of them. We have a bazaar exclusively on conservation. We've done one on wildlife last year. So you can go to the tab Book Bazaar, and when you click the link, there's season 1, season 2, season 3. Each of those links, when you click into them, they'll give you books categorized by different themes. This one, of course, conservation in season 3 of the bazaar. If these books excite you and interest you, and I'm sure the books that our guests have authored are just wonderful, ones that need to reach you, do consider picking them up from Funky Rainbow. I'll, get started with a clutch of recommendations. And my first set of recommendations are 3 books on endangered animals as a whole. I'm going to begin with one that we really love, which is, PS, What's Up with the Climate, written by Bijal Vajrajani. I mean, all of you do know that she has her heart in the environment and has several books on the environment, written by Bijal Vajrajani and illustrated by Archana Srinivasan. Now, the thing about the book is that it's talking about the change in climate. I mean, it's too hot somewhere, it's too cold somewhere, there's no rain somewhere, there's too much rain somewhere else, and there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. What happens to the animals? I love the format that they have adopted. They're writing, animals are writing these letters. Grizzly bears, for instance, can't figure out, whether to sleep. Penguins, they don't know what to eat. Kangaroos desperately trying to escape forest fires, bees feeling groggy, all because the climate is changing. So each of these creatures writing letters to human beings, writing letters, about how their lives have changed entirely, and in the process of that. In the process of those letters, the reader understands what is plaguing us. I mean, I particularly love one spread, illustrated spread, which I want to show you, of the kangaroos fleeing the forest fires. I mean, it's such a telling image of, how much our climate is changing. There's also the lovely, there's always a message of hope in these books. But I love the fact that there are these letters, and many of these letters return to their senders. For instance, to the mosaic-tailed rat, returned to the sender. To the golden toad, returned to the sender. To the olive ridley turtle, returned to the sender, no longer visits this beach as the waters are too warm, no forwarding address available. What a poignant and wonderful way to to show us that there are so many animals that are on the brink, that are endangered and perhaps on the brink of extinction. So that's one book published by Pratham, priced at 65 rupees. And I had a clutch of 3 of them, which generically sort of focused on endangered animals. This is another one that we utterly and absolutely love at Funky Rainbow, Endangered Animals of India. And I love the subtitle, Threatened in Their Own Homes, written by Prabharam and Meera Sriram and illustrated by the wonderfully talented Lavanya Karthik, taking you through the through different Indian animals that whose status is endangered, whether it's critically endangered, whether it's and you can see these beautiful illustrations like of the Nilgiri tar on the spread that I'm holding up. And it says and they are talking about its status, like the IUCN status, which I was telling you, which is the measure of how endangered a species is. The IUCN status for the Nilgiri tar says that it is endangered. Numbers left around 1500, but giving you a lot of facts. And while talking about the creatures, their natural habitats, in a sense, this book, takes you through India, whether it's the swampy Sundarbans, from the swampy Sundarbans to the big plains on the west, right up from the snowy Himalayas, right down to the Indian Ocean, giving you information on each of these creatures, their habitats and what threatens them, what is endangering them. And, one of the things that I discovered, in fact, in the course of reading these books, is that the IUCN actually has different categories of extinction. And they have a red list categories, and, these are applied to classify species at their risk. What is the risk of global extinction? And it divides them into 9 categories. I had no idea, actually, because most of our books have them as maybe endangered, maybe critically endangered, then maybe threatened. But there are 9 categories, and they are not evaluated, data deficient, least concern, near threatened, vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, extinct in the wild, and finally extinct. I mean, look at the classification, look at the the data that researchers have collected on various species, and that sort of timeline giving us a sense of what we need to do to help, let's say, critically endangered species not move into the next category of being extinct in the wild. So this one, introducing you to the Endangered Animals of India, published by Mango Books, priced at 250 rupees. I mean, the age groups of these books, I mean, it's really hard to tell. Children are very, very interested in animals, even when they're pretty young. So you can talk to them, you can show them the pictures, but if they're reading on their own, we would say perhaps 8+ is what would work for that one, for the Endangered Animals of India. And there's this lovely one that came in last week, written by Chelsea Clinton and illustrated by Gianna Marino, called Don't Let Them Disappear, 12 Endangered Species Across the Globe. What a fabulous book it is. Really love the cover of the book. You can see that, right? And the wonderful thing about the book is that it tells you how there are millions of species, of animal species in the world, and what makes each one of them special. And the fact that there are some of them that are threatened, that are endangered or critically endangered, and what we can do ourselves to prevent them from disappearing off the face of the planet. And she too has a wonderful key. On the first spread, you can see beautiful, the same IUCN classification she has actually listed up over here, saying that some animals are more in danger of disappearing than others, and this is a scale from not endangered to extinct, and she has classified them a little bit in a child-friendly manner: not vulnerable, nearly vulnerable, vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, extinct in the wild, and extinct. And just look at these gorgeous illustrations. My God, really, it's a fantastic book of nonfiction, really meant for our youngest readers. And what I love in all these books, and that I think is, I mean, it's a message that we love to leave our kids with. That yes, as adults, we've messed up the planet in more ways than we can imagine. But if we work together, we can change the future. We must work together to change the future. This one, leaves us with a positive message, a message of hope. And, she's giving us, she's giving young readers wonderful bits and bytes of information on what you can do just in and around you. I can see Archana saying, "Good morning. Hi, Adya, Diksha, Rastogi." Okay, so she's telling her friends that, I know you love this bazaar because of how wild you are. We are delighted to, welcome another wild friend of ours to the bazaar. Good morning. Lovely to see you here this morning, Archana Atri. And Amrita Goswami saying, "This is just an amazing theme." Yes, indeed. And a theme that we need to focus on over and over and over again. So there are three, those three books. This one we would recommend for, kids beginning 5 years. This one published by Penguin Random House and priced at 699 rupees, but available at a special discount on www.funkyrainbow.com. I think this one's up at a 15% discount. Diksha saying, "Hello, Vidya auntie, I'm delighted." So I'm assuming that's Adya saying, "I'm delighted to be surrounded by birds like black drongo, rose ring parakeets, black kites, oriental magpie robins, jungle and house crow, red rumped and red whiskered bulbuls, spotted doves, common rock pigeons. My, we have a young Salim Ali in the making, common miners and golden back woodpeckers, greater kukals, sunbirds. Oh my God." And we also have occasional visitors like the oriental garden lizard and Asian house geckos, rat snakes, kraits and cobras. My God, where do you live? Can we have hosted the bazaar from there? The wild ones that we are surrounded by are the wild ones in my office. That's the wildlife that I see here. And my colleague saying the wildest of them all is on camera, Sham saying, but he forgets that that's the wildest one of them all. And we really do have a wild connection of books. And Mutama, the great animal lover. So you know who the wild ones in our office are, really. And, your Diksha confirming that that's Adya. We love it. And Archana saying that she's my 7-year-old nerd. It's wonderful what you all are doing to, spread this message of conservation and, even the love of books amongst children. It's the best thing to do in the world. Arunji saying, "Glad you're doing conservation and wildlife." Yes, I know, Arun, you did ask for it last week, saying that we can't have enough books on the theme. I was looking forward to it. It's helpful now, in my joy of giving week. How wonderful to remind us of a lovely theme. Yes, it's the joy of giving week, folks, and give the people that you love, adults, children, give them books. No better thing to give besides your love and affection, of course. We get on, and so we're going to continue with our recommendations and what we've picked and chosen them species wise this time, saying that let's introduce you to different endangered species and the books on those endangered species. So we're going to begin with the tiger, of course, and with this wonderful book by the late Kamla Bhasin. I mean, what an inspiring personality she was. What a towering public figure she was, working for the welfare of women all over. Such a great proponent of equality. And that one spreading, that sentiment spreading to her love of nature as well. And there's this wonderful Sultan's Forest, which she wrote originally in Hindi, and her sister, who's a filmmaker, Beena Kak, the two of them undertake a trip to Ranthambore and they are in quest of a tiger, the tiger cub Sultan and his Ammi. Now the lovely thing is that in the book, Sultan and his Ammi refer to Bina, the photographer, and Kamla Bhasin's sister, saying that she is jungly Bina. She's bold. She's not afraid of the forest or the animals, says Sultan. And that's because Bina well and truly loves the jungle and wanders in the jungle for hours on end taking photographs. And it's these wonderful photographs. And I'm sure when Kamla joined her sister on this sojourn, she was inspired to write this lovely story of Sultan's life in the Ranthambore forest. And, while it tells us a story of, like a warm friendship between a woman and the wild, it also highlights, issues of, what is plaguing the endangered tiger. It's meant for our youngest readers. You can see there's just little text and there are these stunning photographs. And, in the telling of the story, it brings alive the story of the people of Ranthambore, about their survival, their concerns for the forest, and absolutely their big, big concern for the endangered tiger. It's such a lovely book. And we really are huge fans of Kamla Bhasin at Funky Rainbow. So I'm so glad that her sense of equality and justice, we have books in which it encompasses, it goes into the wild world, into the natural world as well. We'd recommend this for 5+-year-olds, published by Tulika. One more book on the tiger, and we've tried to put like books in in different age categories on a single animal. If we have this, is this spectacular book from Tara. Tara's books are nothing short of spectacular. And this one called Where Has the Tiger Gone by Dhawat Singh Wike. And you can see this die cut cover that I open with, and like a tiger in a cage. I mean, I love the memory with which the book opens. I mean, he's a Gond, Dhawat Singh Wike, a Gond artist from central India. And often the Gonds, who lived in the, close to the forest regions. I mean, he talks of a time where there was a time when tiger and human beings lived close to each other and roamed freely, and it was a familiar creature. It was familiar yet wild, but one that played a compelling role in people's lives and in their imaginations. I mean, a ferocious beast, magnificent. It was feared, it was also revered. And what a stunning way to introduce children, one, to art. Look at the way the Gonds, represent their natural world. Look at the way they talk about the creatures, great and small. I mean, through this beautiful book, Dhawat is offering us a glimpse into a forgotten world. I mean, he's retelling, an old Gond stories, and, all of which are richly symbolic of how they lived, people and animals lived in harmony with each other. Jungle dwellers only taking what they needed, not destroying our natural heritage for their own greed. I mean, it's such a evocative remembrance of a time and a place, and even, let's say, a relationship that's perhaps lost to us today. But I don't want to say that it's lost to us today. I want to say that we can keep that alive. We can bring and recreate that. Certainly this book does. Joanne Saldana saying, oh, this one is stunning. So we have a publisher spotlight every month, especially in these festive months. I mean, we began the spotlight yesterday, and the publisher spotlight is to focus on specific publishers whose books we put out at attractive discounts right through the month. It's the festive season that begins in October, going on till New Year, basically. And a lot of you sending out gifts to people. And like Arun said, the joy of giving week, consider sending out books, folks. I mean, there can be no better gifts to send out to people that you really love and care for. The thing is that these books, and Tara is our publisher in the spotlight for all of October, the books at 15 to 20% discount. And for those of you who know independent bookstores, that is a giant discount. It is the biggest that we will ever be able to afford. So the Tara books in our publisher spotlight right through the month, do consider picking up these books, because they are available at great prices, especially this one. Arunji said, I wish someone brings Jim Corbett with illustrations by contemporary illustrators. Last week, one student spoke to me about Corbett. It is, yes, indeed, that's such a fantastic suggestion. They did that for Rudyard Kipling. The Jungle Book stories by, I think published by Rupa Red Turtle, had Prabha Malya illustrating those books so beautifully, so evocatively. And it's the original story, right? I mean, and in two parts, I do remember that the contemporary illustrations, Prabha Malya's exquisite art, adorning the pages of that Jungle Book. Yes, and I think there are the books on Corbett that are meant for adults, but perhaps we really must get someone to do them for children. Fantastic suggestion, Arun. One more book on the tiger, and it's, we don't focus on these books very often, published by Terry, called 18 Tides and a Tiger by Anjana Basu. And I think she has her heart in the Sundarbans, and she has her heart in the midst of tigers, because in this book of fiction, which was shortlisted for the Hindu Young World Good Books Awards a couple of years ago, she tells a wonderful story about a young boy who's interning in the Sundarbans mangroves. And, he's hearing legends of how the tigers roar in the Sundarbans, can make the strongest and bravest person quake in their shoes. And the thing is, a lot of legends and myths and folk tales abound there. But this one, while Rohan, the protagonist of the book, is interning in the Sundarbans, he realizes that there's one tiger that's real. That tiger is not a myth, is not a legend, and that tiger needs to be rescued. What does Rohan do? And Rohan, Arun, to just tell you, because you brought up Corbett, Rohan has interned earlier in the Corbett area, in the Jim Corbett National Park, and he finds the terrain of the Sundarbans so very varied from what Corbett is. What does Rohan do? Can he rescue this tiger? Is there help at hand? And what a page-turning book this one really is. You can see, small illustrations. We'd recommend it for 8, 9+ year olds, depending on what levels they are reading at. But Anjana Basu, if you check our collection today, there are one or two other tiger books by her as well. 18 Tides and a Tiger is one that we really, really enjoy. Our next set of recommendations, and I can see Arun saying, I got a whole collection of books from Terry. Indeed, a publisher that's, maybe a lot of schools know of, but a lot of parents and, teachers, maybe, a lot of parents not aware of these titles. We have a large collection from Terry, and they are great information books as well as an occasional book or three of fiction, 18 Tides and a Tiger being one of those. Our next set of books that I want to recommend, two wonderful ones from Tulika and Shekhar Dattatri, who we knew when he, was working at the Madras Snake Park and then the Crocodile Bank, when he began way many years ago as a young man. He joined the Madras Snake Park as a volunteer, and, then has gone on to become a passionate conservationist and, a wildlife photographer and filmmaker. So there is Ira the Little Dolphin, which is, of course, it has such wonderful photographs of Ira, on the Irrawaddy River. You can see that, doing wonderful backflips in the calm water of the Chilka Lake. And, she and the other friendly Irrawaddy dolphins they, are frolicking around, but they need to be mindful of the dangers that are lurking in those waters. And in this lovely simple book, you can see, very little text. 4+ year olds is what we'd recommend this one to, bringing alive, one, the playful and friendly nature of these Airavadi dolphins, but also reminding us that the future of this species is in our hands. In fact, according to the IUCN red list, the list of the 10 most endangered animals in 2021, and I'm going to, I made a list of these 10 animals, some of which are critically endangered. There's the Javan rhinoceros, there's the vaquita, which is a kind of porpoise, there's the mountain gorilla, there is the tiger, there is the Asian elephant, there are orangutans, leatherback turtles, snow leopards, the Irrawaddy dolphin, and the bluefin tuna. Not all of them are critically endangered, but at least 4 on this list are in the critically endangered category. And I think, really introducing our children to these creatures, one, instilling a love of nature in them, which many children just instinctively have, but also pointing to the fact that these species are threatened, and that we need to do something to save. We need to do things. We need to do proactive things to conserve and preserve them. Arun, I can see you're saying that Zai Whittaker's and Romulus Whittaker's books are just excellent indeed. Some of them listed in our Buzzaar. And we have, like I said, a Buzzaar on conservation and also one on wildlife. I mean, if you check both the links, between both these links on conservation and wildlife, you're going to be able to find quite a few wonderful books, and many of Zai's books included in them, definitely. The Riddle of the Ridley is the other book, by Shekhar Dattatri, wildlife filmmaker and conservationist Shekhar Dattatri, which just, the sight of these olive ridley turtles, I mean, thousands of olive ridley turtles emerging from the sea to nest on the sandy beaches of Orissa, the Aribada, as they call it, or the arrival, which happens year after year after year. And these are unique photographs that Shekhar has taken on, at the location, essentially, showing you right from the time that they come out of the waters and they, lay their eggs, and, in the process, making an impassioned plea, to conserve the species, because there are some tragic pictures of, turtles being caught in the nets, by the trawling nets, and, thousands of them washing up ashore dead. I mean, these are beautiful books. I mean, I know that there is an underlying theme of tragedy in these books, but, not something that should prevent us from introducing them to children, because it's just a great way of showcasing human apathy and telling them that that's not what you need to be. We need to get rid of our apathy. We need to be able to do our bit to preserve and conserve these species. Adya is saying, can you show the book behind you called Waiting for Turtles, please? You're going to have to wait for that one, definitely, Adya, because our guest, one of the guests today, is the author of that book, and we have a lot of lovely things that we can show you, and I'm sure he can tell you about that fantastic book that Pankaj Seksaria has written called Waiting for Turtles. I know Arun saying, yes, limited talking time. Yes, we could do bazaars for 5 hours, Arun, given the number of books that we have. But, the whole idea is that we keep trying to showcase as many of these in the different bazaars. And we do really want people to come browse and pick them up if they feel that these are ones that would suit their reading requirements. I'm going to move on to a next creature. And I know we may not have a lot of time, because I do want to spend a considerable amount of time talking, having a chat with Piyush and Pankaj. But I do want to show you these 2 lovely books about the Great Indian Bustard, which is also, in the list of endangered species. And because this is a bird, there were two. This one came to us fairly recently, called Fly Safe Godavan. And it has a lovely protagonist, written by Kara Tejpal and illustrated by Sanjana Desai. This one is about a young girl called Rania, who is, running around the fields with her uncle. And, her uncle calls her and asks her to look at a little Godavan chick, and to keep the Godavan chick and her mother safe. So the Godavan is the great Indian bustard, of course, and Salim Mamu, while he's, taking her, who's her uncle, he's talking about what endangers the Godavan. While he's talking about the creature and its physical traits, he's also talking about what endangers it. And in a lovely little book of fiction, what Rania does to just keep this mama and baby Godavan safe. It's such a sweet little story that introduces our kids to an endangered bird in our country. And exactly in the same vein, this one is a Pratham book priced at 50 rupees. And I mean, really, like I said, we've got books at all price ranges. There are books that are priced at 30, 40 rupees. There are books that are priced at 500, 600, up and available at some discounted prices. So really, if you want to pick them up, you should, just go to our website, www.funkyrainbow.com. Now, this one too, another book from Pratham, maybe for a slightly higher level of readers. Again, a fictionalized story of, the great Indian bustard. This one called The Maldhok in the Desert, written and illustrated by Jayanti Manokaran, about a little young boy called Chaitan, whose family seldom has guests. But one day, some guest arrives. And why does this guest trouble Chaitan and his very, very dear friend Gagan? I mean, like the turmoil in the lives of young people who live, very, very close to the areas where rare species of birds and animals are. I mean, this one is set in a remote part of Rajasthan and tells a lovely story of a bird that is threatened with extinction. Both these books from Pratham, and we'd say, definitely 6, 7+ year olds, depending on what level they are reading at. And I think even if they find it hard to read, as parents, teachers, and librarians, you can, easily sit with them, discuss these things, and make them understand, and show them. Resources are all available at the tip of a finger these days, really, right? To show them videos, to inculcate a love of nature in young people, most of whom have it naturally, is the best thing to do, because I think then that leads them to becoming proactive adults who will care for the welfare of their environment and the world that they live in. We can, what time is it? Okay, it's we have about 10 minutes more, and I do have a clutch of recommendations. So I'm just going to perhaps show you books about a couple of species that we had. There's one on the pangolin called Poe Tricks His Foe. And it's a charming book put together at Kalpavriksh, the NGO, the environmental NGO, that has these wonderful books for children about, different creatures and their habitats. Now, the pangolin, I know a lot of us absolutely, don't even know about this creature. And this story by Sharmila Dio and illustrated by Nilofer Wadia. I mean, imagine an animal with a tongue almost as long as its body. Why does it need such a long tail? And what is, why does it need such a long tongue? And is the tongue just one of the unusual things about this creature called the pangolin? Well, you have to meet young Poe in this story, who sets out late one evening to look for food, only to run into some kind of trouble. Now, this is a lovely story, and at the end of it, of course, there are beautiful photographs of the pangolin with lots of bits and bytes of information on what endangers this species, and that there are 8 kind of pangolins found across the world. The 2 found in India are the Indian pangolin and the Chinese pangolin. And it is unfortunate that humans hunt pangolins for their skin, for their scales, for their meat. But this story, Poe is just being really clever. So it's a happy, positive story that introduces you to a magnificent creature that is threatened, today, and perhaps a great way for us to tell kids about this wonderful creature that shares this planet with us. And Kalpavriksha's books, so affordable, so wonderfully produced for young readers. This one priced at 75 rupees. Going to show you 2 lovely books about the snow leopard. And it was in the critically endangered list of the IUCN of 2021. 2 excellent books on the snow leopard for 2 age groups, actually, right? And you do know, many of us know, that the snow leopard, the elusive snow leopard, is called the ghost of the mountains. This one, written by Sujata Padmanabhan, set in the little village of Ang in Ladakh. And the villagers in that place waking up one morning to find a very, very unusual visitor in their midst. So what happens? Human animal conflict. I mean, the villagers get angry and they threaten to kill this visitor. But fortunately, the children of this planet have their heart in the right places. And there's a young boy in the story, the only one who believes that this ghost of the mountains, this visitor, must be spared. What can he do? What can he do against senseless adults, is all I will say, really, right? Can a young boy din some sense into their heads? It's such a lovely story, and we do know that Sujata Padmanabhan has worked extensively in Ladakh, and so a sense of the region, a sense of the creature, and a sense of the people who live in that region comes through so marvelously in this slim chit of a book, which we'd recommend for 7+, 8+ year olds. Joanne Saldana saying, such a lovely story, The Ghost of the Mountains, indeed. And look at the prices of these books. They're 100 rupees. I mean, teachers, I know many teachers and principals and librarians got in touch with us this morning saying, some of us can't watch. Can we watch can we watch video recordings of this show? Yes, you can always watch the video recordings of these show. They're up to be watched free on our YouTube channel, on Funky Rainbow's YouTube channel. Look at the and on our Facebook page, Sham reminds me, and look at the prices of these books. They must absolutely be on your school bookshelves. Adya saying, I love the way you show the books and narrate them with the auntie. I just love the fact that you read them and you know so much more about animals than I do, Adya, actually. And that makes me feel that there's hope for this world yet. One other book on the snow leopard by Deepak Dalal, and I know we've recommended these Vikramaditya books over and over again in several of our bazaars. Deepak Dalal, Vikram and Aditya, 2 boys setting off on adventures in different locations of India. When we did the tiger books, we couldn't speak about Ranthambore, but you know that there's a Ranthambore adventure in that series. And I can see Preeti putting up a comment saying the whole family is rooting for our current favorite, Feather Tales by the author Deepak Dalal. Indeed. I mean, Deepak Dalal bringing his love for nature so beautifully into these books. And in this one, it's a mystery set in the icy climbs of Ladakh, the icy mountains of Ladakh. And Mutama reminds me that, he visits these places and he spent hours and days trying to get a photograph of the elusive snow leopard. It isn't easy. Believe me, I'm sure it isn't easy to see it. And when Deepak talks about it, of waiting patiently, waiting quietly, waiting with cameras on the ready. And you have to have that patience if you have to be treated by a spectacular sight of these magnificent creatures. Now, this one again, it's an adventure, of course, and Vikram and Aditya, they befriend a young girl who's a bit unhappy. I mean, her name is Caroline, and she just wants to see the snow leopard at any cost, and they know that anything that has to do with the natural world takes patience. And and what is that mystery? Are they able to track down a snow leopard and see it? It's such a lovely book, meant for older readers, we'd say. It again, reading levels depend on how your children, at what level your children read, 9 plus or 10 plus. We'd say 10 plus perhaps. This one, published by Penguin. I know that they do recommend it for older readers, 11, 12 plus, but I have seen a few kids who are 10 plus who really love, animal stories, enjoying this. And I've seen many parents giving it to children before they travel to many of these places, so that they're introduced to to the habitats, to the way these places actually are. He has a clutch of them: Ladakh and Lakshadweep and Ranthambore and the Andamans and Sahyadri. And there is this snow leopard one, priced at 250 rupees. Vijay Lakshmi Nagraj saying, hello, Team FR. Thank you for bringing this very special bazaar on conservation. It's a theme so close to my heart. Greetings for Gandhi Jayanti. And so well said. She says, let us all be the change we want to see. Absolutely. So very well said, Vijay Lakshmi Nagraj. Thank you for joining us. We know you have some lovely books on, the natural beauty of India as well. Sunila Kulkarni Gupte joining us as well, a dear friend and a wonderful writer with her heart in nature. She says, hello, Team FR. Snow Leopard is such a beautiful book. I'm almost out of time, I think. Maybe I can do a clutch of recommendations. Sham, I'm going to move the black-necked crane book. I mean, there's one book that I wanted to talk about, but there are so many more that I still need to talk about. So just showing you the picture of another wonderful book from Kalpavriksh called Saving the Dalai Lama's Cranes. Beautiful chapter book on, and I just love this illustration written by Neeraj Vagholikar and illustrated by Nilofer Wadia about the black-necked crane in Arunachal Pradesh, and an action-packed story, of how, these birds are under threat, and, how the protagonists of this book set about trying to save some specific black-necked cranes. Our next recommendation on this list is two books that are set on, in two wonderful wild places. There is Sita's Chitwan, written by Vaishali Shroff, which is all about a walk through one of, Nepal's first wildlife national park. Not just a walk in Nepal's first national park, is what she says. And in this beautiful book, she wonderfully captures the essence of Nepal's first protected national park, which is home to over 550 species of birds, awe-inspiring animals, and, especially the magnificent one-horned rhinoceros. I mean, it's a great way. I mean, you walk into the park, you understand, along with Sita, the protagonist of the book, who dreams of being a nature guide just like her father. So with a spring in her step, and, with a lot of, eagerness and happiness, she takes, along with her Baba, she unravels the secrets of the forest for tourists. But just one time, she wanders off the beaten path and comes face to face with a mama rhino. What does she do? I mean, it's such a beautiful book with conservation so wonderfully, absolutely at the core of the story. And, the Chitwan National Park is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So it gives our children a glimpse into a space of natural beauty and a reserve and a national park in another country. And there is a lot of information you can see later in the book, about Chitwan's flora and fauna, and of course about the remarkable efforts made by the team that manages the national park to conserve its species. Highly recommended for children and adults. I mean, I didn't know anything about the Chitwan National Park before I read this book. We'd recommend this for 7+ year olds. It's absolutely a delightful story. And right up from Nepal, from Nepal, we come to Silent Valley in Kerala. And, our one of our favorite writers, the late Subhadra Sen Gupta, with this lovely book called Listen to Nature's Song, which is all about the big Save the Silent Valley campaign. I mean, I just love these books where people get together and decide that they are going to be the change that they want to see. They're going to do what it takes to preserve an area, to conserve species in an area. And this one, published by Terry, it's part of its Caring for Nature series. And I do know that Subhadra has written several other books about the Narmada Bachao Andolan here, about the river Ganga. And, there's one more in the series. I can't quite remember what that story is, but each one about protected areas and about destroying ecosystems and how young children and people come together to prevent that. All of you are very, very aware of the Silent Valley in Kerala, and how it has such a rich ecosystem. And in this book, of course, they want to clear the forest. I mean, the government wants to clear the forest to build something, maybe to build a reservoir, I'm imagining. And what they do is they just want to cut down large chunk of the forest that is such a beautiful habitat for creatures great and small. And there are two young boys, as in most of Subhadra's book, Raghu and Dhani, and they do want to do their bit to prevent this paradise from being destroyed. And I love the animals that they spot in the course of the story. There is the lion-tailed macaque, there is the Nilgiri wood pigeon, and what better way to get all of us to put our heft behind the Silent Valley campaign and ensure that this paradise is not lost to us forever. Published by Terry, priced at 150 rupees. Sita's Chitwan, we'd say 7+. This one maybe 9+, because it has more text, but even 8+ would work. I'm going to just quickly run through a clutter more books before we wrap up. And these are part of the 10 series, the wonderful 10 series books, published by Duckbill. There's this one about 10 Indian animals you may never again see in the wild, by the one and only Ranjit Lal, who has his heart in nature, who has, birding and animals in every breath he takes. So the thing is, for Ranjit to, point us to 10 animals we may not see in the wild, you can hope to be introduced to some wonderful creatures through his small, essays on these animals. There's the Sonchidia, there is the Strato Cruiser, there are the princelings, and, no illustrations in these books, but there's the Hulak gibbon, there's the Asiatic lion, there's the black buck, there's the rhino, there's the Irrawaddy river dolphin. I think these are great books of nonfiction for middle readers, 9, 10+ years old. And I think it's a fantastic series, the 10 series itself, because they turn the spotlight on, on people or places or creatures that we have completely forgotten, and where in the, maybe media doesn't draw our attention to it, maybe books don't draw our attention. These are stories of some of India's rarest animals. And in the same vein, 10 Indian champions who are fighting to save the planet, you know why they are fighting to save the planet, because they're all conservationists who are, fighting to save the world from human destruction, often against insurmountable odds. I mean, there's Romulus Whittaker, there's Parinita Dhandekar, there's Rohan Arthur, there's Lakshmi Kamble, there's Rohan Chakravarti, and both Bijal Vajrajani and Radha Rangarajan, who also have their hearts in the environment, pointing us to these inspiring people who are trying to solve the most pressing challenges that our planet faces. And of course, because we did mention Rohan Chakravarti, and I know that a little later in the show, two of those wonderful champions joining us to chat about conservation and about their excellent children's books. One quick final recommendation, because we mentioned Rohan Chakravarti, whose works we utterly and absolutely love. There is this set of books from him, The Great Indian Nature Trail with Uncle Bicky, written by Bijal and illustrated by Rohan Chakravarti. And this one, which came in fairly recently, maybe a month or two ago, Green Humor for a Graying Planet, which is, Rohan's fantastic cartoon strips on on the planet and on creatures that share the planet with us, and some of the hard truths that we face when it comes to these creatures and what has happened to their to their survival, how we have threatened their survival. The thing is, we do we love the fact that he's able to make you chuckle through the book. The fantastic thing is, often you're actually laughing at yourself. You're laughing at yourself for being so foolish, for being so unmindful of the planet around us, of the creatures that share this planet with us. The joke is always on us. I mean, and that's just the lovely thing about Rohan's work. But you also learn so many things about each of these creatures that he is, that the cartoon strips. And I think they were published in the Hindu. They've been compiled in a book format. And in this one, him and Bijal taking us on a great walk through nature, with lots of little spaces for you to fill things in when you go on a great nature walk. And of course, this one published by WWF India, absolutely instilling a love for nature, and and that feeling which I think we need to give a lot of our children. I mean, the great wild or beautiful nature and creatures are not far away from you. They could just be in your own backyard. They could be in your own school playgrounds. They could just be in your neighborhood pond. And it's for us to walk with our eyes open and look at the flora and fauna around us. This one really giving us a sense of the fact that the wild is actually right in your backyard. I can see many recommendations. Have I missed any books on the Chipko movement? Yes, indeed. There is, thank you for reminding me about that one. It's there in the Caring for Nature series, Archana. The forest belongs to us. And we also have Jayanti Manokaran's book on Chipko Takes Root. All of them up in our Conservation and Wildlife Bazaar. Some of them are in the Conservation Bazaar links, and some of them are in the Wildlife Bazaar links. I would suggest that you look through both those books. We've tried to focus primarily on ones where the conservation of a creature or a conservation of a certain protected area is in focus. And I can see Sunila Kulkarni Gupte saying, "Poop book, how I loved it." Yes, what a lovely book it is. And that's why we're delighted that one of a long-standing member from Kalpavriksha, Pankaj Seksaria, is going to join us to talk about his new book. Let me quickly just say hello to my friends and then show you a clutch of our new arrivals and our 5 at 20 books before we get started with our conversation for the day. Maybe we'll just do new arrivals because I do want to spend more time catching the conversation with Piyush and Pankaj Seksaria. So, hello and thank you to all our friends who have joined us: CA Pooja Ailwadi, Adya, Archana Atri, Amrita Goswami, Sunila Kulkarni, Vijay Lakshmi Nagraj, Vaishali Shroff, Joanne Saldana, Diksha Rastogi, Divya Menon, Debashish Majumdar, Rupa Baliga, Arun G, Avyukta Nameya Nair, Preeti Ramchandran, Sumitra Raghavan, Tanmay Kagalkar, Anita Venugopal, Guhan, Devansh, Deshna, Sanvali Sood, Goya Tales, Rajkumar, Girl with Green Mind, Anju Murgesh, Kavita Kanmani, Ride Home, Anju Tore, Nandini Nair, Matthew Jacob, The Zen Planet, Appu Kavano, Suvidha Mistry, Vanita Singh, Kahani Tree, Satya Shrujana Reddy, Sonali Jaiswal, Aarti Mutanna Singh, Kavita, Writers Keller, and Minaz Ansari. Thank you to all of you for joining us on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. It's just lovely how many of you come forward and spend your Saturdays with us at the Buzzaar. We truly appreciate it. It keeps us going. It keeps us wanting to do, showcase more and more Indian books. I'm quickly just going to do new arrivals. We'll see if we have time for 5 at 20 later, Sham. But just quickly going to run through the new arrivals because we haven't read these books and it might be quite easy to just show them to our audience. Oh, yes, and brand new on our bookshelves. These are books that have just come in and we still need to read them. But P is for Pappadams. It's an Indian alphabet book by Kabir Sehgal and Surishta Sehgal. It says New York Times best-selling authors. But this one, has the alphabets with several Hindi words, like there's E for Ek, there's D for Diwali, there's B for Bandar, there's C for Chai. We've got to read the book to see what this Indian alphabet book is all about. There are, there's Charles Mahajan, whose Timmy books we utterly and absolutely love, especially Timmy in Tangles, with a brand new book from Scholastic called Reva and Prisha. And this one, I'm going to check, illustrated by Lavanya Karthik. How lovely. We love her quirky illustrations. It's a chapter book for young readers. And, haven't read this one yet, but it says it's about humor, family, and kindness. And God knows we need a lot of that in the world today. Some more books from the Karadi Tales Min-Mini Reads chapter book series. We had introduced 2 new ones to you last week by Poily Sengupta and Varsha Seshan. 2 more in this, collection called Party Goes Viral. That's the one that I'm going to read. I too want to go viral sometime, and I don't know what this party is doing to go viral, but this one by Prabhu Vishwanathan, and there's Manolita by Sara Rajan. All chapter book reads, which we'd say would work for 7, 8+ year olds, but we have to read these stories to find out. There's the lovely Bulbul Sharma with fantastic creatures in mythology. We do love Bulbul Sharma's Ramayana, which was there in a paperback format, like in this novel format. And I think they've just released a larger, illustrated edition. Maybe that'll feature in our new arrivals book, in our new arrivals next week. We're hoping that will come to us, but we love her writing and even her nature writing. In fact, if you check the Buzzaar over here, this time there is her Birds in My Backyard book, which, it features in this collection. So she's here with fantastic creatures in mythology meant for 8+-year-olds. And of course, another one from the 10 series, which I think every single one of us must read. 10 Indian heroes who help people live with dignity, by that wonderful writer editor Sumak Ghoshal. Focusing on this one, I've read on stories of Irom Sharmila, Bezwada Wilson. I mean, the work I have heard Bezwada Wilson speak at the Bangalore Lit Fest so passionately about ending manual scavenging in India. And really, here there's Medha Patkar, there's Dr. Devi Shetty, the great heart surgeon, there's Bhavari Devi, there's Menaka Guruswamy, who's fought for the rights of people across the gender spectrum. Fantastic book, both for adults and for children. The 10 Indian heroes who have, help people live with dignity. So these are some of our new arrivals, and we'll, quickly move to our conversation with our guests for the day. Let me just check if both Piyush and Pankaj are in. Super. So you want to put them onto the stream? I can start introducing them when they come, while they come up. Pankaj Seksaria, as all of you know, is a long-time member of the environmental NGO Kalpavriksh and currently faculty at the Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai. His research interests lie at the intersection of science, society, technology, and the environment. He has over 300 newspaper and magazine articles. I mean, a prolific writer indeed. And most of these pieces focusing on the environment across the years. Now, Pankaj is particularly interested in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and has 3 books based in there. We have the children's book with us that is set in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, but we're hoping to get the 2 ones that he's done for adults, very quickly, either through the publisher next week or perhaps from Pankaj himself. The one of them being his debut novel, The Last Wave, published by HarperCollins, a story deeply embedded in the ecology, history, and people of the place, and Islands in Flux, which is the story of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. But he's here to join us because of the fantastic work he's done in nature conservation, and also because, and I hope Adya is watching, because this wonderful new book published by Karadi Tales called Waiting for Turtles, written by him and illustrated by Vipin Sketchplore, which is an awe-inspiring story of the elusive turtles, the elusive sea creatures, the turtles that come, that are, that you can see in the Andamans. Hi, Pankaj. It's great to see you here this morning. As I'm just going to check that the audio is all fine before we get into our conversation. Just hold on a second.
I can say hi. Am I audible? Is that
yes?
Right?
Yes, yeah. I can absolutely and clearly hear you. And thank you so much for joining us at the Buzzaar this morning. You can see the absolute band baja barat that you get, and so does Piyush, because everybody at Funky Rainbow and my team, actually, Mutama and Sham, Bharti, Sujita, with, so much love for, for the wild in our own backyard. I do believe that the wildest of them all are inside the office, but there is really lots of trees in our midst, and monkeys and cats, and visiting us at the bookshop to browse through our books, of course. We also welcome Piyush Seksaria, who has been in touch with us for so many years now, sending us his wonderful book, Our Tigers Return, very many years ago, when I think maybe not too many bookstores, had copies of this one. And we just have to say, we were turning the pages of Our Tigers Return, the story of the Panna Tiger Reserve, absolutely awestruck by the amazing story that made the return of the tiger possible at Panna. And the reason, of course, Piyush, he's a development professional. He's an architect, as I found out yesterday, and a geographer by training. And I'm like, is there something that Piyush Seksarya cannot do? He takes photographs as well, of all the places that he goes to. His first love is nature, and he tries to find ways to work in that space. He's the co-author of this wonderful book, Our Tigers Return, the story of the Panna Tiger Reserve. And I think the reason we have both Pankaj and Piyush here this morning to talk with us is because in their books, they tell such positive stories of conservation. And I think our world needs that hope. Our world needs to know that we can do a lot of things to undo the wrongs that have been done across decades, perhaps across centuries. So welcome and thank you so much. And brothers, so that was my first question to the two of them, actually, really was all about two brothers, both avid nature lovers and nature conservationists. What did your parents feed you? I mean, well, jokes apart, tell us what kindle this love for nature and creatures that share the planet with us. I mean, one of you can go first, maybe Piyush, if you'd like to.
Sure. Thanks so much, Vidya. Thanks, Funky Rainbow. So, it's sometimes there are things that you take for granted, and this question I was thinking about this question a bit yesterday. And I think other than what is probably a natural love that children have for nature, it's the fact that I think my parents encouraged this love. It meant, maybe organizing some books. And also, if I remember right, never discouraging that curiosity, although they didn't necessarily get it. They didn't necessarily understand what this is, but they never discouraged it. And I think that probably, and of course, chance, meeting some interesting people, mentors. And when I look back, I think that is what drives me, is that I was able to find and sort of build upon this love for nature because there were people around me who went out of their way to help, to guide. And I think it's a combination of factors which actually played a role in, at least when I think back on it, that sort of got me into nature.
Lovely.
Thanks.
What about you, Pankaj?
Actually, credit goes to Piyush because Piyush is my younger brother. Maybe on the screen he looks older to me. I don't know.
We have set the record straight just now. Although I would have had to ask who's younger and who's older.
So he's losing hair on the top, and I'm growing a grey beard. But Piyush was actually always much more interested, and I remember he started off birding and all that much earlier than I did. And I also remember as an older brother, I still remember I used to mock him and make fun of him. I'm sure he must be kind of wanting to get back. But so his interest, which initially I didn't understand, and just very quickly, it didn't take very long time. I did get interested. And like he said, there were other people who came and instigated or catalyzed that interest. And exactly like he said, I think there were different set of mentors that, because we also as individuals we go different routes. We had seniors and friends who were common, but also different kinds of mentors and different kinds of opportunities. And I think, and again, like you mentioned, I think my parents, because while they didn't necessarily support in the sense that they didn't know what is happening, because it is very new. We are talking of almost 3 decades, more than that ago, and it's a very different time. And I think both my parents, and particularly my father, they really allowed us. And I think when I think back, and exactly like you said, it's not something one has thought about much, but I think a lot more credit goes to them than I think I have certainly given them, because in the context of the world that we live in, what expectations community and society has of parents, and then what they have of their children, to allow us to do, and maybe they thought that these guys are not going to listen anyway, or maybe they thought that we were doing something interesting. So actually, a huge credit does go to them, because if they had not let us be, then I don't think we would be here today. Of course, other things come into play, and I do think it must have been a bit of a challenge for them both to understand, and also, in some senses, to the extent that they could, to protect us from the demands otherwise, and let us be. So many things, but for me, certainly Piyush's initial interest, a whole set of other experiences and mentors, and then fundamentally my parents.
That's just lovely for all the parents, and we do have a lot of parents watching us. I mean, that's, leave your children be. Let them look at those ants. Let them, kind of follow, look at the birds and the trees around them. We've gotten so overprotective these days of our children, but you both of you actually said that in such wonderful ways, that they just let you be. I mean, and that natural curiosity for nature, mostly, kindled in many kids for sure.
Also, Vidya, if I might, it's not just about as a young age allowing children to look around, but also the career choices that
Yes.
have allowed us to make, which is not, not very out of the ordinary, but also not very conventional. So
Yes.
even much later, I think both for Piyush and for me, the choices we made are not necessarily very mainstream, although, like I said, they're not very out of the way. But also allowing for that is, so it's at various levels as children grow up. That we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So well said. You're right. Not just as young children, but even when you grew up, and to let you make the career choices and to support you in those decisions. Like I can see Arunji saying, yes, I think parents' support is very important. And Joanne Saldana, library educator, saying, let kids be. What stellar advice that really is. So, Piyush, your book, Our Tiger's Return, is such an exhilarating story of how a dedicated team of, forest officials worked to get the tiger count at Panna from almost zero, isn't it? From almost zero to maybe like in 10 years, about 50 or 54 or 55 animals in there. And you said that, some trips to Panna in the book, when you write the introduction, that it's some trips to Panna and the hearing of this story that prompted you to write this, to co-author this wonderful book. So tell us about it. Tell us about your co-author and the Panna story.
Right. Thank you, Vidya. So I think first of all, the co-author is Rangaiah Srinivasa Murthy,
Yes.
who was the director of the Panna Tiger Reserve and was the architect for the revival of Panna. A phenomenal forest officer, phenomenal man. The story of this book is actually pretty fun. I consider myself to be a bit of a nature enthusiast, and I keep myself informed of what's happening in the wildlife space and so on. And I had a friend, Sanjay Thakur, who works in the Central Indian landscape, including Panna, who was passing by my place in Delhi once. And he talked to me about the revival of Panna, saying that, there are more than 30 tigers now. And I said, oh, really? I thought the tigers were finished. And, he said, yeah, you guys, you urban nature lovers, you're lost in your own world. You don't know what's happening on ground. And so he was kind of challenging me. And I told him that, we need to do something about it. If I don't know it, obviously a lot of people don't. And he laughed at me and said, okay, really? So why don't you do something about it? What's the big deal? Like, why don't you do something about it? Who's stopping you? Right. And in that moment of sort of spontaneity or chiding, I said, yeah, of course, like, let's do a children's book. I had done a little bit of work for children earlier, and it was a sort of space that I thought would be interesting. And, this little thing actually then led to me going and meeting Mr. Murthy, who initially told me that, Piyush, it's a very busy day. I may only have 15 minutes for you. But he actually spent like a couple of hours narrating the whole story, showing me slides, showing me images. And what we basically, I think, were driven by was the fact that this was a unique story, not just for India, globally. It was happening right in our backyards, and we had no clue about it. And we felt that not only the children of India in the larger sense, but the children of Panna, of that landscape,
Right.
need to know the story. The story needs to be like a legend in the landscape and in the country. And that's what drove us to put the book together. We've did it in English and Hindi simultaneously. The idea, of course, being that the Hindi version would be more friendly or appropriate for the Panna landscape. And there were a number of people who came on board. Many of them volunteered. We had a designer friend who's also done the cover illustration. We had people who gave photographs. We have people who gave illustrations. So if you look at the book, it's a bit like a khichdi where we have different illustration styles coming in. We have different characters created for different, originally for different books sometimes. And since we didn't really have resources, but we had people and we had an idea, we just went all out for it. And our idea was that we try and illustrate everything that we write to the extent possible, so we could transcend the age barriers. So we look at it as a book which can be read by somebody who's younger but doesn't necessarily have that grasp on language because it's well illustrated. But it will also be of equal interest to a teenager or even an adult. So, of course, there were lots of challenges and there were different people that came in. There's Last Wilderness Foundation, a Bombay-based organization that came in as the publisher and organized resources. There are other people who donated money so that we could actually print. And we were able to then do a fairly massive release in Panna in November 2015.
Nice.
It was quite a unique event. Thank you.
That is just absolutely lovely. I mean, and I love the fact that there are there is Megha, the young girl. There is, of course, Rangaya Srinivasa Murthy as Murthy uncle in the book. And, actually telling you the story of how you go about bringing a species back. I mean, there's like a lot of work, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of, love for nature. And the thing is, the book doesn't hesitate to, to show you maps of the reserve, to sort of point you to the fact of what they did to try to bring the tigers back, in a span of like, say, 8-9 years, from 0 to 50 plus tigers or 54 tigers, perhaps. It's just a remarkable book. All adults, I mean, lots of facts, I mean, woven in between a story, and a great, like he said, I mean, it's a book that needs to be read globally to recognize the fact that we have had this huge conservation success story at Panna. The book is priced at 200 rupees. We have the English version at Funky Rainbow, and hopefully will soon, from you, Piyush, get the copies in Hindi as well. To Pankaj, I want to say that, Waiting for Turtles, which came in more newly, I mean, it was, came into our shelves just last month. It brims with your love for the Andamans and Nicobar Islands and how they are home to 4 of the 7 sea turtle species on Earth. So tell us about these elusive sea creatures and your, and your story of how these, of recording how these creatures come to nest, in the Andamans year after year after year.
Yeah, so I mean, that is also the story of the book as to what happens in turtle nesting. And marine turtles are really enigmatic, very fascinating creatures because, like you mentioned, Vidya, there are 7 species of turtles on the planet's ocean. 4 of these nest on the islands, on the beaches of these islands. Now, what's very fascinating about turtles is that they are entirely creatures of the water. So marine turtles spend their entire lives in the water, except for the fact that they are born on land. Now, these thin strips of land on our coastlines that we call beaches, which are actually in the eye of the storm for so much development, tourism, infrastructure, and all that. These thin, really razor, if you zoom out on a map, you can't even see the beach, these things we call beaches, yeah? They're really tiny, I mean, 20 meters across or whatever. Now, these beaches are, they're absolutely crucial because this is where all these baby turtles are born. The leatherbacks, I mean, one of the turtle species and the turtle species have been around for 150 million years. So they're with us from the time of the dinosaurs, for instance. And for a creature, yeah, this is the giant leatherback turtle that you can see. While the particular book that I've written is not about this turtle, but a very similar story could be told about the giant leatherback. The giant leatherback is the largest of sea turtles, can grow up to 6 feet in length, can be 600 kilograms in weight, for instance. Now, what's important to keep in mind, like I said, is they live their entire lives in the ocean. They're born on land. So the baby that's born on land, if it's a male, that turtle will never, ever come back to land again. The male turtle spends its entire life in the ocean. The female also spends maybe 99.9% of her life in the ocean. She only comes once a year or maybe once in 2 years to these beaches to lay her eggs. Now, for a creature that is spending the entire life in the ocean, if the beaches are not there, the creatures don't exist. And the way we are kind of almost, I would say, devastating our beaches, sand mining, port construction, tourism, sand mining, the garbage that comes onto our beaches, the oil that gets washed ashore, these are absolutely fundamental for their survival. So it's a huge paradox and a huge challenge of how do we ensure that these beaches, which are very exciting and very attractive for human beings, also are very, very crucial for them. So and there's a fantastic drama of nesting that plays out on these very remote beaches. I mean, they happen all over. They happen in Chennai. They happen sometimes on the Bombay coast and the beaches. So it's not like it's far away. And probably they have been nesting for a very long time, even in these beaches. But as the environment becomes more hostile, more activity, more people, more garbage, more light, then they're going to stop coming. So that is at the basic one point, and the other is that they are great travelers. They're absolutely amazing mariners. So there's some research in the Nicobar and Andaman Islands by a group of researchers actually based out of Bangalore. Group of researchers at the Indian Institute of Science and Dakshin Foundation. As an example of, they tagged these giant leatherbacks with satellite transmitters, and they tracked them swimming from these islands as far as Madagascar and as Australia.
Wow.
So how creatures connect the planet and how creatures connect land masses. I mean, birds and animals do it much, much more effectively and beautifully than human beings do. So I think there's so much beauty out there, and there is so much challenges. So in a sense, it's also like trying to tell the story of that beautiful creature and that beautiful experience one has had of watching them nest, and hopefully evoking that excitement for children. That's kind of one attempt I've tried to make in that.
In fact, today, and I know when we were chatting yesterday, I said there's not that many children that watch, but there are many kids. There was one young girl, who said, "Can I see the book at the back of, that's at the back of you? I want to see the book Waiting for Turtles." Adya, I hope, you have now been introduced to both Our Tiger's Return and Waiting for Turtles, which is a book of fiction. So there's like a, young boy called Samrat, who's pretty much like you, and his mother, a sea turtle researcher, Seema. They are headed to Tarmugli Island, I think, right? I mean, Tarmugli Island to, observe these turtles. So it's, beautifully illustrated, and, it's really an awe-inspiring book on these sea creatures, and the illustrations and the writing absolutely capture the landscape so wonderfully. We have 2 trailers of the book, so we'll play them for you before we go into the into our next question. But I think we have them, isn't it, Cham? Right? For Our Tigers, you can go with Our Tiger's Return, and then we can do Waiting for Turtles. So we'll just show you the trailers.
Our Tiger's Return. Our Tiger's Return. A true story of the revival of Panna Tiger Reserve. Panna is located in Madhya Pradesh, close to Khajuraho. Panna was especially known for its large tigers. Panna's largest tiger measured a cool 11 feet 3 inches from nose to tail. In the 2000s, Panna's tigers started dwindling. Finally, just one male tiger remained. The forest department decided to reintroduce 2 tigresses. T1 from Bandhavgarh and T2 from Kanha. Disaster struck. The only male had disappeared. They decided to release another male tiger, T3 from Pench. Immediately, T3 started moving away from the park. T3 moved a good 442 kilometers before he was recaptured. What if T3 moved away again? Tigers use urine to mark their presence. Female urine from the Bhopal Zoo was sprayed in T3's area. The trick worked. T3 stayed, met T1, and they mated. On April 16, 2010, T1 had delivered 4 cubs. Tigers had returned to Panna.
So lovely that film was, and so beautifully made, actually, and the shadow puppets working so nicely to tell that story. We'll see Pankaj's, the book trailer as well, and then come back to the conversation.
So hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining.
Sorry. I think we got the wrong video up, isn't it? Isn't that the book launch video, Sham? I think you need to give the trailer one. Okay, while you get that up on screen, we had a mistake. Piyush had Pankaj had shared the book launch video, and I think that's the one that Sham put up. While he's able to get the other one, I want to say that so many children, there's Avyukt and Ameya Nair, Avyukt all of 9 and maybe Ameya 3, saying we've seen the olive ridley turtles at Gahirmatha in Orissa. And so many, people commenting saying, I saw the olive ridley turtle, Sunila Kulkarni and Vijay Lakshmi Nagraj saying, we saw the olive ridley turtle hatching at the crocodile bank. What an amazing feeling that was. And, many people appreciating that, the using of shadow puppetry to tell the story of, of the Panna Reserve. Many claps and all of that coming your way. Sham, are you able to get up the trailer? I'll get on to the next question and then you can show the trailer. No problem. Yeah. So while he pulls that up, what I wanted to ask you also was that, Piyush, you're a developmental professional. You're a development professional and you're an architect and a geographer. And Pankaj, you're a faculty at IIT Mumbai and, a member with the Kalpavriksha. With so much of academic work and so much of research work, how easy or difficult was it to distill this into a children's book? Was that a tough thing to do, or did that happen effortlessly? Each of you can give us your answers. Pankaj, maybe you can go with it.
Yeah, sure. So, I have, I was thinking about this as well, and I've increasingly moved towards really enjoying the process of writing. So, I think I've become more of a writer and maybe less of a conservationist, and that has been my journey. I really love the engagement with the word, with playing with words, with writing. I try and write quite regularly. And one has to do a whole range of writing. So sometimes that is both very interesting but also challenging, right? From academic stuff to articles or stuff like that. So in some senses, I might say that I've been trying as a writer to explore other forms of writing, to see how large a canvas of writing can I explore successfully, which of course a reader has to tell you, because author can only write. And a book is a transaction between, or writing is a transaction between the reader and writer. So I've tried my hand at many things actually. I write fiction, I write academic stuff, I write journalism, so writing about children is something that I've done in the past. Say a couple of stories for Chanda Mama many years ago through a series that Kalpavriksha was doing. Okay. And like you mentioned, Kalpavriksha has been doing a lot of children's writing and so I thought I'd also try my hand at that. I also have a son who's 11 years old. So in a sense, it's a story of that age group, and it's easier to kind of associate with that. But I think writing the story perhaps was not so difficult, I must admit, because I had a sense of what story I want to tell. I knew the details of this. And as a matter of fact, the story, I think, is a very interesting incident, and hopefully people who will read it will agree with that. But it is based partly on something that I personally experienced when I was in the islands myself. So the event of which the little boy experiences is something that I went through myself in a very similar kind of way. So I've tried to adapt that real life incident into a fictional piece. I think the challenge was, and I think all kinds of writing have their challenges. And in that sense, the publishers and the editors play a very important role. And I think the key advice or message that Shobha from Curry Tales had is that we can't be preaching to children. We can't be talking down to children. I mean, one has to just tell a nice, pleasant, or unpleasant story, and people have to, readers, young, old, have to be left with the opportunity of taking away what they want from that. And I think a lot of writing, say the journalism may not be, or activism kind of writing may not be that, but otherwise, if we leave the stories open, if we explore the grays, tell a nice story, I think that's what's important. And I am, like I said, I'm moving away a little bit from being a conservationist as an activist to trying and telling good stories, and this has been one little first effort for children from my end.
Lovely, lovely. So that means more books from Pankaj Seksaria very soon, I'm sure, like, right? Especially for children. Piyush, what about you? Sorry, Pankaj?
No, I was saying, yes, I'm hoping I will get around to doing some more. Yeah.
That's just lovely. Piyush, what about you? Wait. We've lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So, I think for me, there are different triggers and they've come at different times. I would say in the more recent, so I've had the luck, or I've had the privilege, you could say, of being able to travel, see things, be able to read and have access to a lot of books as a kid and also as I grew up. And somewhere, I also got this, you could say, feedback or advice from people I respect, saying that, Piyush, you should be writing more. You should be sharing more of what you've seen. You should be, taking on more. In some ways, they were indicating that you should be a little more responsible person as far as sharing what you've experienced. And I think that is one of the triggers, I would say, in the recent years for me to start writing. And what also helps me as a writer is that I'm actually interested in a number of things in terms of different art. So I like drawing, I like painting, I do photography. I've published as a photographer, I've published as an illustrator. And I find that for children's books, all of these things come together so beautifully.
Absolutely.
I also enjoy this whole act of working with a team and coordinating and, finding common ground so that although we come with disparate sort of backgrounds, we sort of find common ground and inspiration through what we are trying to do. And it's, of course, time consuming. It also sometimes leads to differences of opinion and even worse results between old friends. But I would say I've been able to negotiate this journey fairly well, and it's been very enriching. And then, of course, the most important is when you get feedback from children, and it can just be overwhelming. It is. I remember I did a talk at a literature festival organized in Pune for children by Vaishali Kulkarni, and there's this kid who came onto stage, and he told me that I want to do something, and I was like. He said, I know everything about tigers. I know what's going on. I really like your story, but I want to do something. Like, tell me what I can do. And I was so dumbstruck because I didn't really have anything to tell him. And then I told him, okay, at least let me gift you a book. He said, no. I don't have the money for it. And I said, look, it doesn't matter. I'm gifting it to you. And he said, so he was very embarrassed, and then I gifted it to him. And then later on, during the same event, he brought his mother to meet me. So, the kind of reaction you get from children, we also get reactions from, say, the Panna landscape, from people who've read the book, from children who've read the book. So that's sort of, I think, for anybody who's here, who's working with children, working with books, as in whatever capacity, I think that's the main driver that keeps you going. So, yeah, thanks.
No, absolutely. I mean, so well said. That's what it is. I mean, we can see, once we put out the trailer, there was like a bunch of kids. Oh, wow. Can we see some more? This was so beautiful. Thank you so much. I mean, that kind of effusive, I mean, those eager minds, and being able to give them. And that's what actually that, we love about the books. See, it doesn't take away children from the picture, both your books, right? I mean, there's a young boy in Pankaj's book, and there's a fictional girl character, I'm sure, in yours, which show us that, there are things that children can do, that we can do just, by making a visit to a place, or maybe just to your local pond, or you go to the your own backyard, go to your school playground, look anywhere, and there are things that even children are empowered to do themselves. And I like the fact that both your books give children that agency. I mean, and that's, I think, it's the game changer as far as I'm concerned, really, right? So Pankaj, really, conservation, such a big word. I mean, which sort of brings me to that question. But it's really about introducing children to our natural environment, to plants and animals and birds that live in our very own backyards, in our school playgrounds, perhaps, just in our local parks, maybe like forest reserves, isn't it? I mean, is there any any conservation story that you would like to share with us, or any success story that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of the doomsday kind of messenger here. The scenario is grim. There's no doubt about that. For various reasons. And in many ways, I think we are all part of the problem. But at the same time, and there are many stories to be told. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And one just needs to scratch the surface, and you see the very fact that so much still survives. I mean, the story that Piyush writes about Panna. One also has to remember that first the tigers went extinct over there. Yeah, I mean, and that's a fear across the landscape. So in this case, there was a revival, which is very positive. But those larger problems are there. So I feel what I want to do in my writing is actually to I mean, exactly on the lines that you have said, is at least to tell the stories of what exists. In some senses, to bear witness, to show a record of what exists. And I think it is such a fascinating world of birds and plants and animals that the moment we start to expose, certainly the younger generation, the children, maybe through books, but perhaps even better through real life experiences and taking them out, which a lot of people are now doing. I mean, increasingly, there's a lot more exposure possible, which has to go beyond, I think, certainly television and maybe even books. So while it plays a very important role, and I think these are very, very important, but there is the possibility of that real life experience. You just step out any of our houses, any of our cities, not very far from where we are, you will see that that beauty of nature around. And a combination of these stories and these books, and the combination along with actually the real experience, is all we need to, I think, introduce certainly the younger generation. They'll pick it up. They'll pick it up like this, because children, I think, and everybody here knows better than anybody how inquisitive and capable they are. And I think if we do that much, I think that's enough, because then they'll chart their own paths and they'll chart their own territories, and they probably do much more than we can or we will. But that is the way we can introduce them to that and open up that world, because that is a very large and beautiful world, and allow for opportunities and possibilities of exploration. I think that is what will then get them to demanding more of the positive stories and the unfortunate stories. But yeah, there are lots of very, very interesting experiences and challenges, and people doing amazing work. And many stories can be narrated, but my stress at this point would be perhaps open up that world, which for many reasons is not even accessible, either through books or through real life. And it's much better now, and there's a lot more opportunity than there used to be. So the wide range of writing that's happening now, for instance, is very, very welcome. And we have so much that is now available. And if we can make them available further to kids, then I think that's all we really need, actually. And in multiple languages instead. I mean, that's another challenge, I think, for a country like India. And I think people are doing that now that it isn't happening. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I can see some comments, going up. Sunila Kulkarni saying, "Wonderful listening to both of you. Thank you so much for these insights." Archana Atri, who runs a book club, saying, "Vinita and Kripa's book, Lost and Found in a Mumbai Koliwada, talks about protecting the olive ridley turtle so subtly and sensitively. Lovely recommendation." Actually, we got in touch with their publishers during the pandemic, and I think they've had some trouble for a while. They had just hunkered down, but I'm happy to tell you, Archana, that the publisher just wrote a week ago saying that we are now ready to send out those books. So we will certainly put Vinita and Kripa's books from especially the Lost and Found in a Mumbai Koliwada into Funky Rainbow's collection. And Sunila also saying it's so true what you've just said, Pankaj, that Vedantangal, for instance, such an amazing place for birds, and that kids respond to it so naturally and with excitement and joy. So most people echoing the fact that even more than books and television, and I, at this juncture, I have to, tell you about a beautiful story that Zai Whitaker wrote for a magazine that we were bringing out about this child who had been watching Nat Geo, and the magnificent tiger, at the Nat Geo, the up close shots of the glorious stripes, etc. And then on his birthday, he tells his parents that he wants to be taken to the zoo. He wants to go to see the tiger at the zoo. That's what he wants to do for the birthday. It was a heartbreaking story. I mean, when, she gave it to us maybe over 10 years ago, about how when he went to the zoo, he saw this sort of, fly infested tiger and no rippling muscles, no orange stripes. I mean, we had so many letters from kids that wrote into us saying, that can't be true. Like, that's the tigers have got to be like those glorious Technicolor that you see on Discovery or you see on, Nat Geo. But there is, I mean, not to send a doomsday message, but to really go out there and see these things in the wild. I mean, to see them with your own eyes, way better than any experience of watching on TV and perhaps even imagining it out of a book. But Piyush, I wanted to ask you, the one thing that we know so clearly now, if we didn't know it before, is that how interconnected everything on the planet is. I mean, if it's the one thing that the pandemic has just sort of blown up close in front of our eyes and shown it to us, and that the need for us to transform our relationship with nature is more important than ever. Do you have a hopeful story on such a transformation to share? I know I keep harping on the words hope because somewhere in the children's space, I mean, I know we need to tell them the truth and we need to show them like it is, but we possibly just need to leave that hope alive, saying that we can make a difference.
Yeah, I completely agree in the sense we can be hopeful. There's no reason not to be hopeful. And the pandemic has been challenging, of course, in many ways that we are well aware of. At the same time, it's also given space and time for people to re-explore their backyards, their balconies, their neighborhood, and even, I would say, homes. And what I have found is that, and I'm sure all of you are part of that sort of ecosystem where we have found new spaces to engage with children. I'm part of a storytelling platform called Katha Mehfil in Pune, run by Vaishali Kulkarni, where I record one story a week. And there are actually, I think, 7 stories a week that are sent to those children every day. And my story typically is on nature in the backyard, nature in my surroundings. Mm-hmm. And these are sometimes stories that I've written earlier. Some of them I'm actually noticing now. So, for example, I've done a story on the house gecko and talking of how the house gecko is the work from home specialist. We're talking work from home, and here you have the house gecko, who's the work from home specialist, who's all around us. And then, of course, so, okay, I may know a few things about it. And then when I start reading up, because I have to write a piece, I discover so many other fascinating things. So there's a whole universe out there in the house gecko. And, there's so many fears and there's so many sort of associations that are based on half-truths or even false information. And so just in the house gecko, right from the fact that I find a little eggshell in my bookshelf, and then I'm discovering or rediscovering this little neighbor of mine.
Okay.
So I think that the pandemic has actually given us an opportunity to explore our immediate surroundings like no other event in the past or in the future is going to give us. And I have seen a lot of people engage, whether it is terrace gardening, balcony gardening, composting, cooking, learning new things. So in that sense, I think that, of course, the pandemic has been very difficult and there have been lots of challenges, but there's also been this space to explore, to dig into our archives, to do things that we would have otherwise not done. And actually, to be honest with you, I also find that for somebody like me who travels or used to travel all the time, I find that I don't have actually the need to travel anymore. I would of course love to travel, but it's not the same drive anymore. So I think I found a bearing in the immediate environment where I exist. And I think that's a very positive takeaway from the pandemic and in the way people have dealt with it, the way Funky Rainbow has dealt with it, for example. So yeah, that would be my takeaway message actually from the pandemic. Thanks.
Yeah, we would love to get back on the road for sure, and we're hoping, that. Yes, I mean, she says, Muttama says, we're like animals in the zoo, just, caged in our office at the moment. And we're just hoping that schools will be back again. And but such a relevant point made about connecting with your immediate surroundings, in the course of the pandemic. I can say, I can see many people agreeing with this whole thing. Vijay says, my 4 grandkids are great nature and animal lovers. If they had their way, we would have a zoo. Okay. And Sunila saying, I love what Piyush says, everything is in my backyard. And Avyukt Nair, a young man of 9, saying, my dad's favorite is the house gecko. We have named ours Mr. G, and my dad says he's the best raw agent to have around, really. Look at those lovely ideas. And I love that work from home example just out of the original work from home person was obviously, is obviously the gecko. I mean, lots of people watching are parents, teachers, and librarians. So to the two of you, what can they do to get their children interested in nature and in conversation? And conservation, I'm sorry. And, some simple tips that you can give. And I'm happy, like I said, to say that there are some children watching as well. So you can address your tips to either the adults or children. Would you like to go first, Pankaj?
Maybe Piyush is better experienced, and I think what he just said is very, very insightful. So maybe Piyush should go ahead.
Yeah. So a lot of people here listening are educators and understand the world of children and the kind of space they inhabit and learn from much better than I do. But one thing that I've found is that there is an inherent natural sense of curiosity that children have. And we just need to, at least what I've tried to do in what I write and what I narrate, is to bring that out and link it up to something personal and fun. So the fact that I find this little eggshells of the gecko in my bookshelf is a trigger for a story. But of course, that story then talks to so many other things. Or the other day, I found that in one of the plugs in the veranda, it was filled up, and it was actually a wasp nest. Oh. And then I kept a lookout, and one day the wasp, a young wasp, came out of it. And I said, wow, this is a National Geographic moment right here. I may have a little bad phone camera, but here I'm capturing a National Geographic moment where a wasp is coming out of its nest. And I actually wrote about it, and it became a pretty elaborate piece because the more I read about it and I tried to understand what's happening, I found that there's so many categories of wasps. The wasp that I was dealing with is called the renter because it doesn't build its own home. It
Wow.
occupies existing holes, right? So there's so much work that fantastic people have done over decades, researchers, scientists, photographers, and it's all there for us to like discover and enjoy. So I feel that we should be driven by the sense of curiosity, by the sense of the fascinating world that we inhabit in. And importantly, we need to go out. We need to go out to Ranthambore and Panna and Kana and Corbett. But we also need to go out and look at the windows and niches and the corners and the cockroaches. Cockroaches is going to be my next piece. Like, I think they're really
Wow.
fascinating insects. So there's so much. Birds are like, I would say in almost any urban setting in India, you have probably 50 species of birds that you find. It's phenomenal.
Right.
And then there's so much. What comes in terms of fruit in your garden, in your fridge, where does it come from?
Right.
So if one is to link this back and build the stories, it's almost like you'll have a story per day. And you could start with your masala box in the kitchen, and there's so much there in terms of the natural world that's feeding us. So, yeah, these are some things that I'm fascinated about. So the next stories, I think, for me are going to be the cockroach and the masala box.
We're just loving it. Every nook and cranny, like kitchen se leke veranda tak, like, right, 4 stories. What about you, Pankaj?
I know. I think I'm not as good as Piyush in that. So I would. But I was just feeling on a slightly different note is that there are opportunities also that others have created. I mean, there are NGOs, there are educators. So also to try and kind of not support them as in support them, but by joining the activities and all these organizations, individuals do need support in various kinds, including participating. Of course, the pandemic has made it difficult, but because we learn from these people. So there are these people out there who are trying to make it easy for us in that sense, creating opportunities for people like us and children to go out. So and they have the expertise, they have the logistics. So also to try and reach out to them, and it's a moment when they would appreciate being acknowledged, and they would also appreciate that we are with them in that kind of thing, and things can be much more easier and more fun because there are these people who can tell us more than what we might know. So that's just a small thing, that resources exist. I mean, there are fantastic books, for example, that you all are also making available. There are these individuals, there's a world around us. Absolutely. So I think just kind of looking at that, maybe one small step, but also helping others out to building solidarity in that sense too. They need us and we need them, kind of thing. So that might be one small suggestion from my end in that sense.
Such a lovely suggestion. I mean, Kalpavriksh, like the NGO Kalpavriksh, that has these books, really, right? And so affordable, available in multiple languages. I mean, when we started the conversation, one of our guests, Arun, and I think he had a question. He said, how much did reading influence the two of you to do what you're doing? He pointed out that it's Joy of Giving Week or something, right? Like, so he says, reach out to people, give them books, like you say, support the independence. I mean, it's taken a great deal of effort to put together these books. These are like, not like big money publishers who are doing this, essentially, right? So for all the people watching, that's a great way to express your support. What a wonderful suggestion you've made, Pankaj. And I can see Adya saying thank you. It's been such a lovely and engaging conversation on conservation, and many people agreeing, saying that so true what Piyush said. I had a tailor bird making a nest on a zinnia plant. It was fascinating watching the stitching and the growing nest. And Vijay Lakshmi saying, absolutely true, Piyush. I have many stories from my kitchen, which I told the children during this pandemic. What a good suggestion, essentially. But yeah, so many of them, appreciating what you said. So the questions, the two ones that popped up, Muttama's one was that, Were you guys squabbling like siblings do? Really? Come on, out with the truth. Tell us. Did you fight?
So the truth is that we
Hell over
continue to
what?
squabble. And we did squabble a lot as siblings. So I would say maybe more than we should have, but that is how it was.
He has a very famous Toblerone story. The triangular chocolate of how I, as a we were much younger, of course, and how I think we got in the house and I kind of stole and ate his Toblerone.
Well, you're opening a can of worms, Pankaj. Be careful.
It might just be a box of Toblerone that opens up, guys. You can go ahead and share it. Do you collaborate on projects even now when you're working together? Do you do work together on projects or exchange research ideas? And
so we definitely do discuss and sort of I would say reflect on each other's work, but we haven't really worked together on anything as yet. And maybe it's better that way.
Otherwise, none of the Toblerones ever going to come to you then, right? Like I'm the older sibling in my house, so I know what that means. Like if we played chore and police with my brother, he was always the chore and I was always the police. Like that. So, older siblings, my gosh, really. And Arun's question, in fact, he says it's been so fascinating, this chat, and thank you, for doing this on Gandhiji's birthday to be discussing conservation. He wanted to know if the two of you read, or were there any inspiring readers. I know we've gone out of time, but I'll just take one or two questions before we wrap up. Really, did you both read, or writers that you've enjoyed reading?
Pankaj, why don't you take this?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, actually, I have not been as good a reader as I think I should be, and I keep missing out on that, and I feel I should be reading a lot. I keep telling my students this all the time. I mean, I'm talking to master students, and the amount that the paucity of reading for various reasons is so high, increasingly. But I just feel that I was also, as a younger person, if I remember, I was very much an outdoor person and very much a sports person also. So I really played a lot of stuff. I represented my school and all that. So I think reading was not something which I took to till very recently, as a matter of fact. And even now, I think I read much less than I should be. And I think I lose out on that because what I've realized is that, and everybody says that to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader. And I do know that when I'm writing stuff, and like I said, I've been writing different kinds, I can immediately recognize the influence of what I'm reading in what I'm writing. In the content, in the style. So, and it does enrich. So to answer Arun's question, no, I've not actually read so much as somebody might assume I have done. And I would like to do more of that for sure, absolutely. It should be done, yeah.
Piyush?
So, well, I distinctly remember as a child, there was a clear fascination for wildlife-related themes. So whether it was Jim Corbett or Kenneth Anderson, or I can't remember the name of these characters. It was an American brother couple that actually went all over the world and collected animals from the wild for zoos. Then there was Sanctuary magazine and Cub magazine that we started getting in childhood.
Yes.
They've just celebrated 40 years of their existence
Wow,
today, which is just amazing, which is like, I think, very rare in the world, not just in India.
Yes.
So there were these sources of wildlife-specific reading that I think I was completely keyed into, and I would read word to word, and I used to actually be this little awkward child in school at times where I always had stuff to talk about when anything related to wildlife came up. And friends in class would say, "Oh, the wildlife guy is now going to speak." And so, well, of course, like children, or at that age, at some level, you couldn't be bothered about what your peers are saying. But at the same time, you're also like very conscious of what your peers are saying. So there's a kind of conflicting situation that used to arise. But I think I was driven by a certain fascination, and I think reading definitely played an important role in in my understanding of the world, of gaining knowledge, of feeling very nice. It was very enriching to be reading something interesting on wildlife. And I revisit some of these things that I've read earlier, not necessarily to read them back, but to just see what I was reading then. And, I'm really amazed by the quality of writing people have done, the quality of illustration, the quality of editing. So hats off to all those guys who wrote. And in some ways, I think that also drives you today, where you say, because somebody else wrote or somebody else created, you were able to learn, and hence you're also trying to contribute to that. Thanks.
So lovely. So we'll close with one question from a young boy saying, I have a question. Did they collect specimen insects or anything as kids and bring them home in their pockets? Did their mother scold them? Okay.
I never did that. I wasn't as ambitious or as brave as maybe Piyush may have, but I've never had the guts. I've never had the guts and courage to do that. And not because I was scared of my mother. Just I've never done that. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Piyush?
Yeah, so I did collect things like snake skins that are molted and are just there. Sometimes there were dead insects. Sometimes there were eggshells. Sometimes nests, but never a live specimen. But I know friends, including actually a young friend, who was being bullied by his kind of batchmates until the day he pulled out a live frog from his pocket and gave it to them. Okay. And this little kid was so the star after that, because none of these bullies could figure out that, oh my God, like you can actually handle frogs and you have them in your pockets. Like, come on, like this is somebody else. So, well, I'm sure parents could get a little worked up by seeing these strange creatures. We have to respect the live ones, especially. We have to be careful from the safety perspective, but also from respect for life perspective. So, to that extent, I would not encourage children or even adults to collect live specimens. But of course, things like fallen feathers, snake skins, leaves, fallen leaves, there's so many things in nature which remain even after the live part of their life is completed. So do collect, do keep them carefully, and hide them if Amma gets upset.
Yeah, lovely response. And I can imagine that kid who showed the frog out there like that is the new Iron Man or the new whatever Marvel hero, basically, right? Braver and stronger. But thank you so much. I know both of you have said that, we can do some sessions, maybe quizzes. And I know, Piyush, you told us, about these games that you have, designed. And I'm hoping all of those will come into Funky Rainbow's shelves quickly. We'll, be in touch and get them in, because just look at the interest that exists in all of this, really. And thank you so much for talking to us about your books. I'm just hoping that they're going to fly off our shelves this weekend, and all the people who are watching, you're beholden to pick them up. That's about it. From anywhere but pick them up. That's what it is. Thank you so much, Pankaj and Piyush, for being with us and really, telling us such fascinating bits and bytes of information about the natural world.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy and a privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Team Funky Rainbow. And, let me also confess that it's so encouraging to see all this enthusiasm in the comments. It's really nice. It really feels good. It sort of gives even more energy and enthusiasm to continue doing what one is doing. So thanks so much for doing this.
Yes,
thanks.
write those books, and we will, there are people out there waiting for it. Both of you, both Pankaj and Piyush Seksaria, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful honor and privilege talking to you. From all of us at Team Funky Rainbow, a big thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Just quickly, I know we've run out of time, and how basically not going to do 5 at 20. It'll be up on our social media posts, but I'll just quickly say hello to everyone else who joined us. Suchitra Hegde, Satish Sundaram, Sarvam Kali, Sapna Rao, Varsha Station, Ramna Atri, Sumana Kundagrami. And I know, Sumana, you messaged us saying, I wish you have books for adults. We do have a small smattering of books for adults, and Pankaj Seksaria's books for adults will probably have them in on the Andaman's Islands. We'll try to get them in next week, but we do have other books for adults as well, a small collection of them, because many parents who are ordering books for children, or teachers ordering books for children, always asking us to recommend a few for them as well. It's not a big or wide range, but there's a small collection, definitely. Tara Veeraraghavan, Sarda Sridhar, Rasna Barua, and Erika Taraporwala. Such a pleasure to have all of you at our Buzzaar on conservation. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It was a fabulous session with Piyush and Pankaj, and I'm so glad there's so much appreciation that has come their way for their conversation, for this chat. And do consider picking up their books from us. They are absolutely priceless. We wish you a lovely weekend. It is Gandhi Jayanti Day. It is Joy of Giving Week. Do do pick up books. Do gift it to your near and dear ones, and do consider Funky Rainbow if you enjoy what we're doing. We'll see you next week. Till then, bye bye.